The nation itself gives the order and the instructions, not just one person. Officials receive instructions from the nation. Period of one-man rule is over as of today. It is done. The republic and democracy to go full speed ahead from now on.
Deprem bölgesi yeniden psikososyal destek kurumlarımız 9
However, we will not disrespect our nation's decision in any way. We will avoid being stubborn, acting against the national will, and questioning the judgment of our nation, as we have done so far. We will take the necessary steps by analyzing the messages given by the nation at the ballot box most accurately and objectively, within the reason and in our inner conscience.
Well, it's definitely a turning point for the country, and the Turkish president said exactly this in his concession speech after the election results were posted. So when we look at the data and when we look at the results, yes, it's a very important win for the opposition, but one must also realize just as much as the opposition won the election, the AK Party lost the election as well. So when we examine the data very closely, according to 2019 to 2024, the past two local elections, we have the same amount of valid votes, basically 46 million, 85% participation rate in 2019 versus 75% participation rate in 2024. And we see that AK Party lost 4 million votes, while the CHP gained 3 million votes. We also see that there's 1 million new voters, and also parties that were either non-existent or not a player back in 2019 gained a significant amount of the vote, most namely the conservative YRP party, getting 6% of the total vote. Now, that's a good sign for AK Party and Erdogan. Why? Because it means some of the votes that abandoned AK Party this election didn't migrate to the left. They stayed in the right wing and they stayed in the conservative spectrum. So these are votes that can be won back much easier than votes that would have migrated to the left wing side. So Erdogan has a 4-year mandate, 4 years till next election. If we're going to see a bad defeat like this from his perspective, from the Turkish president's perspective, the timing is probably the most ideal for something like this to happen, because it's a wake-up call for him. He understands that he needs to change some things. He understands he needs to concentrate more on the economy, on migration. These are some of the major issues. The voters sent that message. He has 4 years to work on that, plus the momentum gained by the opposition with this very stunning victory, especially in Istanbul and Ankara, where they very comfortably won. That momentum will most likely have disappeared by 2028 elections, where the opposition will need a new trigger or a new event to gain this type of momentum. So it's a bad loss for him, but it's not the end of the world. It's something he can recover from, and he has recovered from in the past before, when his popularity has dipped, or AK Party's popularity has dipped, but they've rebounded in the next election. Well, first of all, let's look at 2023, when Erdogan won the presidential elections and his party was the #1 party. I think the first question we need to ask is, what's changed over the last year? The economy, the economic state right now, and the economic state versus a year ago were pretty much the same. One can say that the economy was maybe even worse off back then, as we're beginning to see positive signs from Erdogan's economic measures that he's taken now. Turkey is not out of the woods yet, but we're seeing positive signs that signal an economic recovery by 2025, 2026. What's changed is you had serious national security concerns back in 2023, and you also had an earthquake recovery that was in the works, a very terrible twin earthquakes that devastated much of southeastern Turkey. So many of the voters did not want to see a switch in leadership. They were not ready to see a switch in leadership. They trusted Erdogan to be able to solve these two issues, and the main issues, which were national security and earthquake recovery, as the economy took a back seat. But as both of these issues have been addressed or are being addressed, now the economy has come to the forefront, and that's still an issue that the Turkish president is trying to tackle. So that has definitely resulted in a loss of votes throughout the region and also in Anatolia as well, some of the heartland areas. The Turkish president has also been dealing with upstart parties on the conservative side, as I mentioned before, the YRP, which fared very well in Anatolia, in the Turkish heartland, getting conservative votes. They actually won 2 municipalities in Yozgat and Şanlıurfa. That was a huge shock to everyone. Nobody was expecting this. So again, these types of performances put together, a little lethargic nature of the AK Party after 2023, feeling invincible again after winning general elections and also the presidency. That coupled with not being able to reach new voters, young voters, as effectively as the CHP has, all of these things brought together was a perfect storm for the election results that we saw earlier this week. Well, there's always a lot of candidates in Turkey. There was a lot of presidential candidates in the 2023 election. But when we look at a potential 2028 matchup, I think the first question that should be asked is Erdogan going to run again? What type of legal framework would be necessary? Does he even want to run again? So far, he's signaled that he has no desire to run again in 2028. That's been the signaling, that's been the messaging coming from him, his office, from his party. So in the absence of Erdogan, obviously the opposition will have a much better shot at winning the presidency. You have a person like Ekrem İmamoğlu, the Istanbul mayor, who's been waiting in the wings. He was expecting to get the presidential candidacy nod in 2023. He was looked over as the party chairman wanted to run himself. He's a popular character. The mayor of Ankara, also Mansur Yavaş, a popular character as well, because not only does he have his party's support, but he's also a former nationalist. So he has the ability to be able to garner votes from the 20 to 25% nationalist bloc of voters inside Turkey. So that's an important asset. You also have the new chairman of the CHP, Özgür Özel. At the end of the day, he chooses who the presidential candidate is going to be. He might want to run himself, depending on how the circumstances are in 2028. So there are a couple potential candidates right now just from the CHP. We'll probably see potential candidates fielded from other parties as well. But the big question is, who is the AK Party going to run in 2028? I think that's going to be very, very telling. And as long as they're still the number one party, regardless of the local election performance, as long as they're still the number one party, their candidate is probably going to be the front-running candidate. Well, first of all, I have to believe the messaging coming from the presidency, that if he says he's not going to run in 2028 or he's not thinking about it, that's exactly what he's thinking about. At the end of the day, by 2028, he will have been in power in some capacity, either as prime minister or president of the Republic of Turkey for 26, 27 years. So I think it's understandable that he could be tired and he could want to finally step down and say, you know what, I've done enough for this country. I've brought it from an economic crisis in 2001 to now being called a regional power in 2028, a major player in multiple regions. And he might want to step down and have someone younger take the reins and have new leadership. So I think that's very important. If the Turkish president, if Sunday was a presidential election, would Erdogan have won or lost? I think Erdogan would have won. I think Erdogan would have won because federal elections and voter behavior in federal elections are very different from local elections. I think Turks greatly value experience. They greatly value international exposure. They greatly value leadership. And I think in all these areas, no one even comes close to Erdogan, except for the founder of the Turkish Republic, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. You know, when you look at Turkish history, there's really two major political players that have come over the last century. And Erdogan's been around for a quarter of that century. So I think it's very understandable that people want to see experience. They want to see leadership. Yeah, they punished Erdogan at the local level, but I don't think that animosity right now regarding the economics would have played out on the federal level. I've seen a lot of statistics and a lot of reports, a lot of surveys where they'll ask voters, what's the biggest problem? And they'll say the economy, and they'll ask them, who can best solve the problem? But they'll say Erdogan at the same time. So there's this understanding that, yes, the current economic problem, yes, happened under the Erdogan administration, but there's also the belief that Erdogan's the man that will bring us back as well. So it's a very interesting catch-22 love-hate type of relationship sometimes between the voters and himself.